so many different people asking if Web3 gaming is dead, but this is exactly how tech industry is developed. I've been watching tech. I'm 34. I know I look like a child. Every single tech industry, you have the first spark of a new product category. Right idea, right person, right place, right time. They come up with this brilliant new thing. It hits and it blows up and it proves this new idea can make a lot of money and get a lot of attention. But almost always it falls apart. YouTube comments, Reddit threads, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of them have APIs. If you do that, but you put logic, some sort of code and processing system in the middle of that, you can build a huge number of kinds of applications.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Solana Creator House at GDC. Today I am joined by Jordan from Reply Corp.
Yes, hi, Jordan, founder of Eureka and Reply Corp.
And today I'm going to learn a little bit more about what he's building. So first off, before we get on to what you're building though, who are you and how did you get into Web3 in the first place?
It's a long story actually. So I'm Jordan, I was born in New York, and I always loved tech, but also always loved architecture and knew how to become an architect and didn't know how to become a tech founder. So I spent my whole life going to be an architect, and I interned at architecture firms, and I worked at some architecture firms like during the summers. And then after school, I got essentially my dream job working on skyscrapers at this large architecture firm, and did that for a number of years, and had a great time doing it. But I'd also started a music blog with my friend in college, just like one of those guys who's just like always knows every single band that's coming out. He's brilliant at everything music. We just did it for fun, but it had been kind of taking off. And my boss who ran our team was starting his own company, and it was just like a perfect moment. Instead of just going with him to go and follow this music blog thing, we were making music videos. So I got a small studio in Brooklyn, and we filmed over a few years over 150 music videos in there. And we were actually working on a music venue idea. Had a landlord that was coming in as a co-owner of it, who had this warehouse. And the whole idea was to combine a music venue with a video production studio and record every single concert that happens on that stage in a really high quality. And so you get this content catalog that's permanent, and it's it's really valuable to the artist and it's valuable to the venue. And I was about to sign that lease. Like picture like my pen over the signature line when the first COVID rumblings hit, and out of Seattle. And I was just like, let's just wait and see what happens for a little bit. Never ended up signing it. Best timing in my whole life of anything, most likely. And I had been working with this tech developer who I'd gotten to know to do some of the infra side for that project. And a friend of his from real world gold mining that he'd known for 15 years, this guy in his 60s, who's an amazing benefactor of Web3 gaming at this point, he says, hey, wouldn't one of those NFT games make a lot of sense about the gold rush? I don't think one of those exists. This guy is 62 at the time, at the end of the last bull run, coming up with an NFT game. He's like, let people buy land, they can build a gold mine, you can do diamonds and oil and all this stuff. And the developer says, I think I've got just the guy who's all of a sudden looking for something new to do. And they flew in and they met me, and they made an initial investment and hired me. And like the first thing I said to them was like, I love the idea, but how? Because you can't just emit tokens at people, right? Yeah. We were already seeing the collapse of those kinds of early round NFT games. And through, so that everything you create in the game, there needs to be another player that would want to buy it, right? You always need the demand for the supply. And out of that process came Eureka. And now I'm sitting here talking to you.
Okay, and then how, in terms of the idea of the gold mine, how had they even been involved in Web3? Was it I love gold mine?
The guy was
Web3?
A serial entrepreneur. So like him and this other guy had started this gold mining company. They have hundreds of thousands of acres of claims in gold and nickel and diamonds and uranium and like everything all around the world. I couldn't possibly tell you what made this man wake up one day and he probably saw a YouTube video about crypto gaming. Just be like, NFT game about the gold rush sounds great. But But yeah, so while, I am the founder of Eureka and it has been my baby from the start, and, they have been like the benefactors and investors of it up until a while ago at this point when I started covering it with other investment and some revenue and things. I didn't create it. I got hired basically to create it by someone who had the initial idea. And I would have never, I'm a sci-fi guy. I would have never made a game about the 1850s. And then through starting to investigate it, I fell in love with the era, especially for a game.
Yeah.
Because good game design is friction and mechanisms to overcome something that's difficult to do. And in 1850, everything was difficult to do. Merely traveling somewhere, you would say goodbye to your loved ones. For the gold rush, 3-month journey across the continent on the rumors of gold in the hills. And, whenever you'd travel, even for a week, you would say goodbye to your loved ones, whoever, and then you would write them a letter when you get there. And if they didn't get that letter, you don't even know it. So anyway, it's ripe for games, basically.
No, that's a good one, and it kind of feels a little bit like Web3.
It feels so much like Web. That's, I think, one of the reasons Eureka started to catch on with a diverse group of people in the space was it's the same exact idea. They flung themselves across the country for this idea of this new wave of opportunity, and there's gold in the ground. All you need to do is put yourself there, and you can grab some of it because no one else is there yet. That's literally how every single person, through all the different, everyone has a story like mine, their own version of it, of how they ended up doing this. But we're all here because we saw the gold in the ground. And then the gold rugged and is now worthless, and we're hoping it comes back. But we still saw it.
Avoiding the too much of the gold disappearing, I think maybe gold will come back at some point.
Oh, I'm really joking. just for the interview. I'm a deep believer in the value of this space.
What? Because given the timing of kind of when you started, when COVID was, where we're up to now, how have you seen just gaming in Web3 in general, outside of Eureka, just change across that period?
I think we have passed into the critical moment in a new tech industry where it really starts to click. Everyone, the context around GDC right now in this interview and everyone, here just for posterity is that the last week or two on the timeline has been filled with so many different people asking if Web3 gaming is dead because a number of projects failed. But this is exactly how tech industry is developed. I've been watching tech. I'm 34. I know I look like a child. Every day of my life since I was 9 years old. There was that Mac Rumors website about Apple. I read that every single day. I watched Steve Jobs go on the most magnificent arc of a tech company's development in history. Every single tech industry, you have the first spark of a new product category, right? Somebody, right idea, right person, right place, right time. They come up with this brilliant new thing, right? Not really MySpace, but MySpace was the one that hit to create social networks, right? There were a few before that. I think Friendster was first, right? For us, it was Axie, right? It hits. And it blows up, and it proves this new idea can make a lot of money and get a lot of attention. But almost always, it falls apart because they invented the thing. You can't think of everything. No matter how brilliant someone is, you have to learn through doing. And it has a fatal flaw, and it collapses. And then there is the next wave, which is that thing hit. New product category has been established. Every single VC in this industry, all of a sudden, oh crap, the next wave. They wait once a decade for an opportunity like this to be at the start of the next paradigm. They all flood it, FOMO hard. Every single VC shareholder is calling up, why don't we have investment in a Web3 game yet, right? You can't miss it. As if they're going to miss it. So the VCs FOMO in, fund all of these projects that basically say, oh, that failed, but we have the solution. And right now, we're witnessing the end of phase 2, which is the collapse of most of those projects. Because they didn't have everything figured out. And even if they did, the industry hadn't yet matured to a place where even if they built it all, there weren't enough people there to come and do it, right? And so the failure of this group of projects is completely natural, completely normal, and has nothing to do with the failure of Web3 gaming as an idea. Just like the collapse of the website industry in the .com bubble in 2000 did not mean websites were dead. It meant that the initial websites that followed the early ones in the 90s and got all this money and got these hyper valuations fell apart because they couldn't possibly be worth that amount of money yet, because it was going to take another 10 years for enough people to be online for them to generate the revenue. Like, they're promising as if they're going to be the ones to make the money off of what the internet industry was going to look like 20 years from then. And so, of course, that collapses. But that's where we are. Yeah. And almost every website, including the one you're watching this on right now, came out of the carnage of that, learned all of those lessons, and everything was primed and ready for that. And that's exactly where I think we are right now.
I'm optimistic in the same way as what you're saying, that this is kind of an expected, not crash, but games disappearing. I think that what's happening right now is that we've hit a period that the ones that weren't going to make it have hit the end of the runway and they're disappearing. But the ones that did make it are entering that point in the development cycle where we're now starting to see games that anyone would recognize as a game. Game is something that people might enjoy. They're still going to run into the player liquidity problem, that there's 7 gamers, or they're not reaching out as far, or at this point there's a new game coming out all the time, so attention split. But at least they're hitting a further point in the development cycle, so we're starting to see actual kind of games and progress.
Definitely. And that's also a very nice transition to what I'm doing with Reply Corp, because that's exactly what I'm addressing. But just last little thing on that. If you are I don't really consider myself a part of that wave, even though I've been around for this whole life cycle. I've always kept Eureka very, very lean. My burn rate's always been very low. I've been building slowly and purposefully. And I have like a general principle of don't make mistakes. It is much better as long as you can afford to take longer, but it's easy to afford to take longer if you spend way less money. It is much more important to do only 3 things and for them to all succeed. And it doesn't matter if it takes a bunch of time in between, than to do something that fails catastrophically. So I'm still here. But for the much smaller number of companies or games that are from that initial VC pump cycle, right, and are somehow not one of the ones that is out of runway, out of time. Their TGE was going to save them, and of course it didn't work and all, right, because the TGE model from that cycle was flawed inherently, right? These VC-funded coins that are going to be the game token, I don't think it works at all. And it's way too late for them to change. But the ones that are around have this much time, in my opinion, to capitalize on being here, a recognizable brand name with a product that's out or very close to being out. And most of the competition is cleared out. They have this opening to dominate because all of the new entrants are about to flood in. And most of those are going to be the ones that are dominant 10 years from now, right? It's mostly the companies that are created after the fall that succeed. Very few companies from that second cycle actually end up the dominant one into the 3rd and 4th and 5th. But it's there right now. They have a solid moment, you know?
I think that gives people optimism, and I think we will see that. I think some of the people who are hoping that some of these, I don't want to say zombies, but some of the games that rise from the ashes, they've had their time, they went up a little bit, came back down in terms of attention, not so much focused on the price of anything. I'm less of a believer that they'd be able to then suddenly emerge. I think the new ones are kind of going to grab the attention because they've got so much more to build on, less guesswork, less just stabbing in the dark.
Baggage from a mistake from 2 years ago or a promise made to an NFT holder or anything, right? Like,
I think that promise is a good point, actually. I think we're seeing a lot of promises getting addressed in an attempt to get all the skeletons out of the closet so that they can have kind of almost that fresh start. Yeah. But you did say that we're onto an interesting segue of your other adventure.
Yes.
What else have we got going on?
So, the number one thing, bottleneck for a game is actually getting it in front of people, right? Like you're saying, distribution is the whole ballgame. And that's true for any content industry. And so I started putting, without even realizing it, little bits of Eureka on Twitter. I started commenting golden nuggets as responses when somebody would talk about Eureka. And then I made a way for someone to claim that by just copying the link and pasting it in on their Eureka citizen profile, claim a real gold nugget, not a real Eureka gold nugget, one day. And it started to click. This was like last summer, and people were saying to me like, "Oh, I can't wait for another day prospecting the Eurekan frontier on Twitter." And I'm like, all they're doing is kind of commenting on posts, but in their mind, they're in Eureka. It's 1850. They're in the fields. I'm like, that's incredible. Especially like, as a founder, like I haven't built a thing yet. Like that was cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And also it's just interesting. And I made a scalable version of it with these nugget deposits where you could quote repost the nugget deposit, right? It's like shining gold inside of a hill to claim your own. Anyone could mine it by commenting on it with a pickaxe emoji. They get a nugget, you get a nugget. That exploded. We went from 2,000 to like 16,000 signed up citizens in 3 weeks, $0 spent on marketing. And it's because it self-propagates. It's a flywheel. And I really knew there was something about it that was working when I forget who it was, but it was a large account for people who've been participating in it, saying, I don't know what Eureka is, but I'm in on the nuggets, my deposit. Here's what you do. I'm like, that's everything.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know anything else, but they saw in this quote repost just enough information to understand what it was, why they'd want to do it, and how to play, and played it. And that whole process is 30 seconds. Sorry, I shouldn't hit the mic. It's a game that markets itself by being played. But it wasn't fully a game. And I started thinking, what if it was fully a game? And then I put out a Eurekan game move a few months later where you can actually like give a prompt to say like, what would you do to survive your first night in Eureka? And that did very well. And I started thinking like other people might want this too. And brought my first 4 initial partners on very quickly, actually, which was crazy. I didn't have a website yet and didn't have a freaking sales deck or anything, and got these 4 very prominent, awesome, very different companies to pay me to start building something for them. One of them, for the ETH lizards, went live a few weeks ago. We did this asteroid mini game that had like, it was again like a post. It says it has 4 asteroids of different colors on it. It says, what asteroid do you want to fly to?
Yeah.
We need to mine for ore to repair our spaceship. And someone, quote reposted and write the purple one. So then once they've flown there, we comment on that, the purple asteroid, and it has zones on it. It's like, which zone do you want to mine? And then you write back, and then we do a dice roll in the back end, and there's 3 kinds of ore with different like RNG rarities, and we give them the ore. And behind the scenes, we are tracking every, the second they reply, their username, now we have a player, right? Their X username, and here's their actions, and here's the reward, and we maintained a leaderboard because you could mine every single asteroid that anyone generated. And the top players mined all 200-something asteroids available, competed very, very intensely in 4 short days. And, this post has 17x their typical views, 13x their typical number of comments or of reposts. Like the engagement numbers are gigantic relative to typical posting. No promotion, no marketing, it's separate expense, right? And the players, their audience, got to be players and have a unique experience that was fun. But so I basically like realized like not only is this not Eureka and it's not just for me and other people would want it, but it's not even just for games. I don't know if you have any questions about that before I kind of...
No, I think...
And so Reply Corp was, born out of this.
I think the only kind of additions that I kind of would ask about it is I do like the idea that it almost feels like a choose your own adventure book, but on Twitter. And we're doing it as a group going through it. And I like the fact that can drag people into a world like you're doing it with Nuggets, you're doing it with the ETH lizards, and what you're saying that it could be branded across whether it's a game, whether it's a different project, as long as they've got a theming, as long as they've got an idea for people to buy into. Do you think that this is only or pretty much only possible within Web3 just because of how terminally addicted to Twitter
Not even slightly.
No?
Because one, I've started on Twitter because that's where our industry is. But I am currently adding in the APIs for this to function. This is social platform agnostic. YouTube comments, Reddit threads, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of them have APIs. All of them have the ability to read posts and write posts. It's that if you do that, but you put logic, some sort of code and process and system in the middle of that, you can build a huge number of kinds of applications on that. You have read and write, right? You can give feedback to users. And so like, for example, on Nike's website, they have the sneaker customizer, right? You can build your own sneaker. I could build for Nike. What's up, Nike? Hit me up. I could build for Nike. They could put up a post with a picture of a sneaker, say, what's your dream sneaker? And someone says, this kind of, Air Jordans. They're like, great, what's your color? Comment back, this color. What are your initials? Back and forth a few times. And then generate for them, here's your sneaker. Here's a link for you, custom for you. 20% off the sneaker if you click this link and buy it within the next hour. That has nothing to do with Web3 or gaming. At the same time, for a game, you're in RPG, let's say, take a mini boss battle, put it in a post, let somebody, comment the attack they want to use. We then generate the new game screen for them. The health bar is chunked down, right? And, but then they did this attack, and you play back and forth a few times, just a little taste. And then, again, you say like, oh, like you got the boss's sword, kick ass, you're amazing. Here's your link. It's waiting for you right in the game. Onboarding. We talk about frictionless onboarding. Onboarding is friction. It's just, unfortunately, so far, a requirement to be able to capture and monetize a user. But it isn't in this. Somebody replies to that post, they're now a player of your game. You could monetize them without them ever even going to your website. There's a version of this where, yes, it's great for a top of funnel, but what I'm really excited to see, and we can go into this more, I'm really excited to see the people who build an entire experience just here. Because why are you trying to convert people elsewhere? They can play your game in, the kinds of games you can build in this: trading card games, adventure games, RPGs, social, competitive games. There's all sorts of stuff you could do. It could just all be right here. Why lose anyone to a link click? But so, to take a step back from that, conversion rates from social media to another website are on average 3%. Once someone's on your website, and like I'm standing at the Wolves Den at GDC first night, packed to the gills with all these people, and this whole event is packed with people building and gaming. 3% conversion from your marketing to the website. You'd be lucky if 5% of those people actually click the button on your site to download your game. Some of those people play your game, and some of those people like it enough and then end up spending some money. And this entire ball game, you and I are sitting here now because of the financial value of those people, that fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. And if you can solve that, that is a constraint. That is like, we all just accept it, that's what we're working with. But this little RPG game I just described, right, hits anyone scrolling their feed that sees anyone that they know who has played it. They could just see it, and they could just play it and go back to their life. And so I think we can transform that 3% number by putting the hook in front of the onboarding, which is where we would all want it if it was possible. It's like social media is like our metaverse, right? Like the collective social media platforms are our metaverse, and the timeline is the city street that we walk up and down each day and looking around, we see our friends, you see what's going on, there's somebody yelling about something, right? And it's like if you walked down Fifth Avenue in New York City, if you don't know, it's like the biggest touristy shopping street, right? And you're like, oh, look, the Chanel store, and you go turn to walk into it and like bang your head against the wall because it's a billboard. And the billboard says, hey, so glad you like Chanel. We put this ad here because there's all these people walking by. Two subway stops away. Come on, it's so easy. 5-minute cab ride. It's so quick. Of course, only a few % of people max would ever actually go do that. That's how we're using our metaverse right now. It's just billboards. I'm saying turn it into storefronts. Let somebody walk in off the street. Just right there, walk inside, play a little of your game, sign up for something, buy something, learn about something, and walk right back out, and they're still on the street. Been talking a lot, but I don't know if you have any question about that.
I think the main question that comes to mind is, with all these experiences, they all going to need to have their own almost backstory and lore, maybe, or how the mechanics of it would work, like using the RPG. What's the dungeon master? What's the brain behind deciding how it responds back to the users?
So there's two things I'm doing right now. I have Reply Corp Lab, which is building these custom white labeled solutions for clients that we have going. We have YGG just announced this exciting new game called Lowland 2 days ago, actually. We're building a little mini game as an onboarding experience for that's coming out in a few weeks. These are all custom built, right? I'm using a lot of the same tech because really it's about the interfacing and the monitoring and the replying. And then for each project, it can be any game logic, right? Like my game uses AI, but you could do a dice rolling game that has no AI, right? Like it's irrelevant to what I'm building, what happens in the process of it. We can do anything.
So depending on the project, it could be really low lift, or they could get
Incredibly
really deep in terms of what someone could be playing.
Yeah, someone could say to me, let's build Dark Souls into a turn-based experience, one move at a time, like an old school text adventure game, and put that into a Twitter post. Or you could take D&D and build that. Like that is a turn-based adventure game. Like I could build an entire D&D campaign into a Twitter post. That would be a lot of work, but it uses the same pieces. All that work happens in the middle of what happens when we're monitoring, then we do something with it, and then we put the output to the user. And so it's completely irrelevant other than how much time it takes to build, right? I would charge, Wizards of the Coast, right? I would charge them a lot more money to build that. But it's the same system.
And you see that this is kind of, like you say, of bringing the storefront forward. Do you see kind of a bit of a similarity to what we were back in the old Facebook days, where I would play, like Mob Wars or Farmville, and my farm's now level 5, you should play. But then even then, while the game was on Facebook, it wasn't exactly there. You're trying to pull it even one step further.
Right. And so that's I'm hitting this problem of distribution from two directions, with two different value multipliers. The one is that conversion rate, right, which we've talked about. But that would be the same for things like Farmville, which is a game in a box, and the box happens to be on a social platform, right? That blew up literally on Facebook. Original Farmville, you could just poke your friends. Hey, and that's all it took for that game to dominate, right? Even though nothing else about the game was any different than if it was in an app on your phone or on a website or on a console. That, like my little example with the RPG and the boss battle, right? If you had successfully converted somebody over to your game's website and they were playing it there, you're not getting anything out of their gameplay unless, right, by them literally clicking the button to attack, selecting the spell from the menu, stuff like that, right? That has zero value to you, except for if they enjoy doing that enough that they end up spending money in your game. When they do that through my system by commenting on the post, they're marketing your game for you. Every single game move is your UA and marketing. It is distributing your game. So we're saying, a order of magnitude better conversion rates to people actually experiencing and playing your game. And then you can't multiply 0 into something, so I don't know what the number is, but a completely new kind of value for their actual in-game actions, because now it's selling your game. And it's marketing it and it's spreading it. And that the game in the box doesn't have. And this basically came out of me trying to build a more interactive nugget experience that you could use in the app on your phone. Right? Like if you can't use it in the Instagram app, in the X app, it's not good enough. Because then you're leaving people out. And so you have to build only with the clay of the existing interface elements on the social platform. And you have to build something totally different using only those pieces. It's really it's always really interesting.
And in terms of the idea of almost having one that lives entirely on X, do you see some projects even trying to monetize users with the interaction that they're having on X, or do you think there'll always be some way that they have to take them off X for that?
So to get specific on that, I have a great flow that we're using in a number of different projects to kind of solve this problem. User comments on a post. we then generate a link for them, right? And it's, replycorp.io/onboard/their username, right? Or whatever partner's website, right? And has their username at the end of it. Click that. The first thing you see is a connect your X button. That's what you land on. So you connect it to verify you are the person that this link was for. And then you can put anything you want after that. You can do a wallet transaction fully attributed to that person, that post. You can take them to the Nike checkout page. You can take them into the final step of your game onboarding. You could host a treasure. Let's say like you wanted to build a treasure hunt style mystery game fully onto X, but you want to give people private information. If they like successfully solve a riddle, you want to give them a clue. Just do it like this. They click, yes, you're leaving X, but you're clicking a link. It's opening up a browser window. You're clicking a button and there it is. Like you're hand holding them through it and there's nowhere to get lost. Like it's good. We could separately slide straight into a DM automatically. Depending on the platform, the costs of automated DMs are very high relatively, and the rate limits are very low relatively. So it's not currently super economical, depending on the platform, to use that as an interface element, but you could. If you didn't care about the costs, you could. Like if Verizon wanted to sign people up through a post, you have a post and they comment on it, right? And then you start like onboarding and then you got to get their personal information and just like immediately they get a DM in the same platform and finish and do the private data. Then you could stay entirely in that app.
And then kind of look into the future. Obviously, Eureka and Gold got you kind of into the Web3 space. So a lot of the projects are starting out quite Web3, just more because you happen to be here rather than targeting it. Are you starting to try and make steps outside of that to see if you can prove it with Web2 and other kind of outside of gaming, even just projects?
That's why I give the Nike example, right? I could build, and obviously I'm naming big companies, so it is more just so it like makes sense. But like you could take Holiday Inn that has a point system and extend it onto social platforms. Say anyone who takes a selfie of themselves at a Holiday Inn, earns these points and gets a discount on their next stay. They already have an entire point system. I could integrate that and extend it onto all social platforms for them and motivate the people that stay there to share that they had a great time, and that would increase these sales. Like, I am fascinated by the idea of this isn't even Web 2, that's Web 0, right? These are I'm jokingly calling it, RWBs, real world businesses, as my next meta for this. Take all of that, but then do it with a company that is natively Web3 in how their founder thinks and does, and how we're going to have a credit system and a token that backs it. The ticker's reply coming soonish. And you can combine these things so that wouldn't it be lovely for there to be a token for a company that is backed by just like they're a real company selling products and making a bunch of revenue for all these like people selling real things, but then also there is still a token and it is still like pushing all this stuff forwards. Like I can't buy that. I don't know what token to buy right now to like just get an actual real world business that's like making money from selling things to people that want them. You know what I mean? Which is a little off topic, but no, I don't know what I think the most interesting thing about it is. I have Eureka for my game loving, and I'm dying to see the kind of games people start to build on this as we start to expand it to a platform where we're just gonna have APIs and you can build your own thing with it without even ever talking to me. Right? That's kind of the end state of part of it. But we're very new in this journey, and part of why I wanted to start with working with cool companies is I could imagine what a questing platform would want to do with this and then try to build it for that use case. Or I can have a questing platform hire me to build something for them and build what they're asking for, and it'll end up a way better product. And so I'm working with different partners and talking to a bunch more, looking for like all these very interesting different kinds of businesses that have their own thoughts and ideas about how they'd want to leverage this. And that is how I'm going to flesh out what this is for. Because it's for a lot as far as I'm concerned. Sorry.
I was going to say, just considering, like you're saying, you're excited for what's coming. If you were to look next 2, 3, 6 months, what do you see as exciting, both with what maybe you do with Eureka, Reply Corp, and kind of the space in general?
I want to see an explosion in distribution and incentive strategies. I think we got very obsessed with the idea of handing out tokens. And I think that is like scratching the surface of what is eventually going to be a gamification of literally everything in our lives. I bought broccoli once a week, every week for 5 months straight, and something, our dystopian health insurance system give me 5% off on my next month because I've been eating broccoli. Or like you see like Allstate doing it a little bit, at least in their ads, talking about like, oh, if you drive safely, your rates are going down. Like, we like to reward you. It's all bullshit. But like games are going everywhere. And I think that is the real opportunity, like the scope of the opportunity for Web3 gaming specifically, because what Web3 gaming is doing is connecting gaming to the economy. We've achieved that already, right? In all of our Web3 games, like the currencies in it are real money, right? The assets are real. Like, we've already done that. We've just not figured out yet the best ways to do it. But everything is converging into one, and I think gaming is going to be a huge element of like the motivation that makes that happen.
I think that's a great point. I know that gamification's across everything at this point. I know I am an absolute sucker for a streak mechanic. Someone puts a streak mechanic in something, I am following it.
Except for Reddit. Reddit, if you're watching, I've been using your platform for almost 15 years daily. And recently, when I upvote something, I get a little thing that says, you've upvoted something 287 days in a row out of 300. Keep that streak up. And it's the first time in almost 15 years that I felt like not upvoting anything because it's pissing me off. And you guys are going to destroy your beautiful social platform if you keep doing this shit. And anyway, so
you've heard it here
early
first,
swan
Reddit.
Song. I'm calling it. I'm so sad for it. Please stop.
Stop it, Reddit.
Please stop, Reddit. But anyway, I love streaks otherwise.
Outside of Reddit.
Yeah.
We've given you the
Love
stink eye. And then for anyone who's kind of wanting to keep up with either mining gold in Eureka or Reply Corp, or they're thinking maybe this could work for their project, what's the best place to keep up to date or even get in contact?
My name is Jordan Feinstein. My Telegram is Jordan Feinstein. I'm Jordan Eureka on Twitter. Ask anybody you know who's in the Wolves DAO, or anyone you know who's on crypto Twitter. Ask Beautiful Gasboat here. People, I am reachable. Also, if you go to my website, replycorp.io, there is an intake form at the bottom. You're welcome to fill that out. I am very much here. If you're trying to just follow Reply Corp on Twitter. My whole plan or X, we keep saying Twitter. Whatever. My whole plan for like the content on that is it's just going to play all of the games and use all of the things we built. So if you want to stay up to date with new things that we've built for other people, just wait for Reply Corp to post its move, right, on all of it or interact with it or whatever. That is how you can see everything we're going to be doing. And Eureka is coming back in a big way. We've been building all this tech in a more kind of modular, abstracted way for Reply Corp, but also to serve as the permanent, much more robust foundation for Eureka. Eureka, in the next week or two, is going live in a post on X and will be live perpetually, constantly, incrementally improving. We are building the first open world survival and nation building game that you can play entirely on social media platforms. That is what Eureka is. And I am, again, I'm just really interested to see what that actually means and what it becomes. I know where I'm taking it, but it's, it's open waters as far as I'm concerned with all this.
Well, if you were born now and you missed out on the last gold rush, you can experience it live on X, because we're remembering now at the end of the interview to call it X rather than Twitter.
More people know what you're talking about if you use the old name.
Yeah, everyone will forever.
Yeah.
But no, it's been great catching up with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add in.
Yeah.
Beautiful Gasboat here was the first interview I ever did in this space. He gave me my first shot and is the only reason I'm sitting here.
And I was in love with the idea of the gold rush from the second we started talking about it. So I will be
lovely
keeping up to date with it.
to be back here talking.
Yeah. But no, it was great talking, and I'm sure I'll catch you around.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone, if you watched this far.